Welcome to another episode of the Tea and Trails podcast. My name is Gary Thwaites, runner, lover, podcaster. You know,
And I'm Eddie Sutton, runner, lover, and podcaster. Let's get this party started. I don't know where we go from that. You just blew my mind, Gary. Right, let's sign up those creeks. Dry your eyes. Oh my gosh, dry your eyes. Yeah, it takes me about 10 minutes. Ease into a run, Gary. Mentally, physically, and also 10 minutes to ease into this podcast and control myself. Oh, come on. Be grown up. Hopefully, by the time this introduction is done, you're ticking along nicely. God, we were just talking before we came on air that when we were in our 20s, because I was just complaining about my knees. Oh, my knees. Bending down to get something. You never complain about your knees, but I'm a big believer. Give yourself 10 minutes, settle into a run, and if all's fine. Well, after 10 minutes, isn't it? It's just a little bit creaky. Anyway, welcome to episode 63. This week, cannot wait. We chat with Tunnel 200 winner and my spine angel, David Bone. We have more tales from the trails. We pop over to Strava. Hey, big hit, the random Strava spin the wheel. People are loving it, hearing their name. We've got a BEET-IT Sports competition and we hear endlessly. I don't know if we do because we've not talked about it yet, but I know we are. Is Gary going to run a 2:59 or a 3:49? Who knows?
I'm sure I can indulge you with those dates. I do, my goodness me, I really lean on my Monday rest days. But that morning run when I just do my little dog jog with Rex, that is rough. Every day, the body does not enjoy.
I would say that's not a rest day then, Gary.
Fair enough. That is a fair point.
Judged already.
Big shout out to our Patreon partners who share some awesome discount codes with our Patreons. We have Precision Fuel and Hydration, Vela Forte, Protein Rebel, Tiki Boo, Mountain Fuel, Outdoor Active, Silver Sweden, Active Root, The Centurion Running Store, Sportshoes.com, Big Bobble Hats, X Miles, Fawnside Farm Cottages, You Go Goo Projects, Red Bear Sports, the Alban app, Retainer Group, Cycle Protection, Summit Crazy, and Ultra Trails 2. Extra shout out to Precision Fuel and Hydration, Vela Forte, and Protein Rebel. We use their product every month to help fuel, hydrate, and recover. Also, not one, but two new Patreon partners, BEET-IT Sports and Lumi Activewear, are sharing some great discount codes with our listeners. I received Protein Rebel drop this week, a lot of gels and some collagens, especially this time in training when everything is creaking. Yeah, really appreciated that. Thanks. Yeah. And those big tins of collagen, you've not seen them yet in the flesh, but well,
no. Well, you had it in a bag and I was like, don't give it to me. I can't take any more.
They are ace. And also, yeah, Lumi Active sent me some merino base layers and some socks. Sensational. Really impressed with how lovely they feel. Great to see all of the positive comments too. A lot of love for Lumi Active out there. And if you'd like to save some money and support the podcast and our partners, then please consider joining Patreon. We couldn't do this without you guys. Also, pop over to Summer Crazy if you would like to buy some awesome Tea and Trails merch.
This week's Precision Fuel and Hydration newsletter is all, I've quite look forward to it now, Gary, is all about training your gut. I thought it was really interesting, and it's a question that comes up quite a lot with our Brew with the Coaches and people asking on the Facebook group how much carbs you should have an hour, and they hear, people, elite trail runners saying, I can push 120 grams of carbs an hour. Emily, with her very sensible head from Precision Fuel and Hydration, said, this isn't a spoiler, but I thought this was quite helpful. Most of us, 60 to 80 grams is perfect for our intensity and the sort of running that we're doing. But it's really interesting. It's all about how you can train your gut to eat more, because one of the biggest things I find with all my athletes is not fueling enough, especially on that long run, and then wondering why hour 3, hour 4, and then the rest of the day is a bit of a wipeout. Though we've got a new thing, haven't we, Gary? A 20-mile run, and life is over for the rest of the day. Why are they so hard? Oh, because when we did the recce, like 20 miles, I was like, we'd stop for a cup of tea, we get going again. But a 20-mile run at home, I wonder if I run them a bit fast. I don't feel that I do, but the rest of it, I suppose when we were doing the recce as well, we were just coming back then and like you were sleeping for 13 hours.
That's it. We didn't have anything to do. We didn't have all the chores, the housework, and just family stuff.
Honestly, I'm like, I can't. I'm like, kids, just bring your jammies down. Don't worry about brushing your teeth. Mum, can you come and say goodnight? And I'm like, oh, really?
It was such a treat when you think about the recce. Just run, eat, sleep, repeat.
Run, eat, pie.
Oh,
repeat.
Still think about that pie. I'm going for 90 grams of carbohydrates. Manchester Marathon.
So you're going to obviously be running a lot faster than I am as well for the Northern Traverse. So
yes.
If I put 90 grams down me, I'd probably be sick within like 5 hours because it's just a different intensity, isn't it?
I say that 90 grams. I'm not too sure what the gram of carbohydrates are going to be for the stuff that they provide, Manchester Marathon. So I will carry 6 or 7 Precision Fuel Hydration gels, which are 30 grams each, and then whatever you can get on the stations. If you are patron, you can get 15% off over at Precision Fuel Hydration. Anyone can get 15% off the first order if they use the code T24. That's super simple and all caps, T24 weekly dates. How's it been?
I had a good week, Gary. I had a good week. Solid. Not great. Nothing heroic. I didn't beat the plan. I did exactly what it said on the plan. I got it all done. Got my gym. Yeah, I've written it was fine. And I think that's the most that I can ask for right now. It was fine. I had a pretty decent long run. Well, Gary, it was a run of many highs and lows. It started when I drove down and did the school drop-off. It was -1 on the van. And I was going to leave the van in town because it gives me more options to like go out different routes. So I had on I started quite cold. So I had leggings and a long sleeve merino top and my full Northern Traverse pack and gloves. And I was it's a little bit chilly.
Is it super chilly because you got so much shade? The sun just hasn't had a chance to...
Sun's not come up and it's just cold, isn't it? It's just cold. Yeah. We're just high, so it's just cold in the morning. The started first hour fine. Had to go back to the van because I hope the gendarmes don't listen to this, but it's an hour free parking. So I just redo the ticket on my van. But I know that they only come out once in the morning. So I saw them as I came down. So I quickly put the ticket then on my van.
Good
and
intel.
Then I was like... Good, yeah. Then they go and have coffees and they don't bother again until about 4 o'clock. Anyway, do you think they listen? I'm not sure that they do. The sun then came up and I thought, I'm going to go and run up to the lake. I'm going to run somewhere a bit different, tick off these miles slowly. The sun came up. As I was coming back down, I think I messaged you going halfway. Got a little kudos from Gareth Waits, stuff of dreams. I thought, God, I've drunk a litre, which in the winter for me, I probably wouldn't drink that much over 3 hours. And I was like, oh, I'm really thirsty. And I was like, I don't know this road so well. Is there a trough? And then because I'd started thinking about it, I was like, trough, there must be a trough. Oh my God, I'm sure there's a trough here. And then I was like, don't get too excited because you could go around the corner and there's no trough. Anyway, there were about 5 troughs down this road, so I was fine.
Yay.
I was so thirsty. And the long sleeve top, I tried to like hike it up above my elbows, lost the gloves by now because it was all sticky. Oh, it was disgusting. It was all sticky and sweaty and it was starting to give me like sweat rash around my it was horrible. And it was like a grey one that I would never normally like wear in public. And it had like the triangle sweat.
What a vision.
Me with my saggy boobs and the triangle sweat. And I had no option but to like run up this hill and then round back through town. And I was like, if I had no shame, I'd take this top off and just run in my sports bra and leggings. But there would be pictures, people would be crashing. I was absolutely, it's this really nasty hill. It's on a road. There's lorries on it. And I was like, I am so, what the hell? I'm like, geez, if it's this hot in 2 weeks' time. And I was like, oh, it's not even that hot. I am so unused to heat. I'm going to die. Anyway, finished the run, just shy of 20 miles. It's literally licking the inner salt off my mouth to try and find some more fluid. And it was 20 degrees in my van when I got back to the van. So I was like, okay, so it was hotter than... It was hotter than I thought. Okay, that's okay, because I just wasn't prepared. Oh, and then, the rest of the day, that really wiped me out. So dehydrated. Anyway.
It's super tough, isn't it? Like people who have races you make a great point that they train in all this cold weather and then they can just tip up and it's like 20 odd degrees. It's like, oh my God.
It also prompted me to do my precision field hydration order, which I've been talking for about. So I was like, right, get all those electrolytes in because you got to get on this, Eddie. You got to get on those electrolytes. So I've got so much. So I bring on that heat. And then I just heard on the news that there's like a massive storm coming. I was like, are you joking me?
What?
Are you joking me? Anyway, to be what it will be. I had a good uphill effort session. There was some breathing, which hasn't been heard since around 1998. You always know you're really nailing a session when dog walkers, you're about 10 meters behind a dog walker and they turn around in fear because they hear you coming. You hear the breathing before they see. I was really pleased with that, especially in the weather that we had. 3 good gym sessions. I actually awarded myself. I made myself a medal. My box jumps now, Gary, are when I started. So I'm going to click over 30 gym sessions that I've done in training for this Northern Traverse. That's 30 hours of hardcore. That's not like mobility or stretching or anything. That is hardcore strength. And when I started a box jump, I was quite scared of the box jumps and I wasn't very good at them.
How big's your box? Eddie, you're filthy. God sake, that was a proper question.
So many things I could answer to that. Oh, now I can't answer because what I'm going to answer is even worse. Not that big, Gary. It's big. Anyway,
big.
The box is big enough for what it needs. Yeah, now I can. Anyway, now I can box jump like I just roll it over. On I jump, off I jump. I feel powerful, Gary. My sled pushes. Oh, people back off when I load that sled up now. They know what's coming. They know
a proper Rocky workout, isn't it? The sled push.
The whole every single workout. I feel like Rocky. I don't look like Rocky. Though my friend did say, gosh, Eddie, your arms are...
I noticed that as you were tearing the naan bread in Hawes.
Oh, stuff a dream. She can really tear that naan bread. Anyway, I feel like super strong though. Now I'm ready. Like I've got 2 more left and then I'll be happy never to do a broad jump off squats again because my poor legs. Saturday night, we went out for dinner with the kids, which was lovely. Oh, got a new game. Uno Flip, Gary.
Ooh, is that just a hybrid version, like random rules, or is it a proper game?
It's a proper game. It is a hybrid of Uno, but we call it nightclub Uno because you play with the normal Uno cards and then you get 1 card, which means that you then flip them and then you flip your cards round and they become a different colour, different whole set.
I nearly
of cards.
brought Uno to our Northern Traverse, Ricky.
Oh my God, it adds another layer of jeopardy.
I've not played.
Well, we had a few incidents, but it was it's a good addition. We needed a fresh set of rules for Uno, and we actually have the rules now as well, so that if there are arguments, then I'm keeping the rules in my handbag for at all times. Anyway, we went out for dinner, came back. I was like, I'm going to go to bed. I'm tired now. Got into bed, 7:45, Gary.
Awesome. That's amazing. I love it.
We'd been out for dinner, had dinner, come back. It was only 7:45.
Cup of tea first.
Oh, in bed. Yeah. Cup of tea in bed.
Yes.
Finished off Love is Blind season 6. I even watched the reunion because I was so invested in what happened to Chelsea and whatever his name was.
Sounds like a perfect day.
Perfect day. And then I started this week with a bit of a rest day because of weather. Well, I was tired last week. I was tired after that. And then the weather was so horrendous. Even the dogs were like, not bothered about that, Mum. No, I don't think we need to go out in that. So I have been meaning to sort my kit cupboard and boxes out for so long. I just carried on stuffing stuff in and shutting the door while stuffing stuff in. Totes classic. So I've sorted all my kit out, worked out what I need. Everything's laid out in the back room. And now I just need to pack it all up because I'm going to do my last long run this week and I want to carry full kit, everything, wear full kit, whatever the weather. So I made excellent use of my rest day. Don't find it hard to have a rest day when I'm busy with the kids, but when the kids are at school, I find it a bit of a change of routine because I'm like, oh, I've got an extra hour. So that's why I was like, right, be useful and do this. And I don't like to do that stuff when the kids are not here, because I always feel it's a bit of a waste. I'm like, could be doing other stuff. But you also, like, it's quite good to get your head in the game, sort it all out, see yourself at the checkpoints, work out what you want in your drop bag, and actually not to have a small child going, hello, mummy.
You need focus.
Focus, a very good word to describe it. Something I lack in my daily life. So yeah, good week. One more week, Gary. One more week to go. Oh, I am ready for it to be quite downtime.
Is the kit bag, I've got no idea if there's a weight limit with these kit bags. 15
kilograms for the drop bag.
I just remember Dragon's Back race. It was super hard on your big kit bag to hit that 15 kilos. It was easier as the week went on because obviously you ate loads of food, but yeah, are you weighing everything out or are you quite loose?
Not yet. I'll work out. What I normally do is I put everything out that I want, and then
the A list.
And the A list gets to the B list, and then the C list, and then who knows, 15. But I'll be less stuff than you'll have for the Dragon's Back, because I won't change my clothes really.
Yeah,
I'll have one set of clothes change in case there's a disaster or it's really wet. But also I'll make a decision when I see what the weather's like that week leading into it as well. And I'm not flying till the day before, so I can make last minute. I know, let's not get into it. Right. Okay, Mr. 259.
Oh, I don't know. I will talk a bit about marathon pacing. I was curious because the pacing groups for Manchester Marathon are 3 hours and 3:15. And I think the word on the street is 3:10 might be enough to be good for age. But Manchester's not London, so you could be quite exposed in places. If it's a windy day, do I just go for broke and tag on to the 3 hour pacer and just use them as a wind?
Oh, okay. Well, there'll be enough people behind. Yeah. I always think like the pace, well, especially like the 3-something, there'll be enough middle-aged men behind that pacer that you can.
I'll be like Kipchoge on the 2 hour. I'm a fan of people in front of me. But I was just wondering if I think the first few miles will just really decide for me what pace I'm going to run. Maybe I will start off at that 3 hour pace and see how I feel, and then just drop right off if it's unattainable for the full 3 hours. But yeah, I'm just wondering if I'm going for that 3:05 pace, maybe do I tag on the back of the 3 hour group and use them as a windbreak as opposed to me just being battered around the countryside?
It depends, because you could blow up spectacularly if you're not in that shape. If you go through that half in 1:29 and the second half could be but you're strong enough that even if you went through, I think if you went through the half in 1:29 and then it was slightly harder, the second half, you've got enough miles in the bank and it's enough strength that you could hang on. I don't think you would blow up so much that it would be, a spectacular. It might just be.
I blew up once at Manchester and I lost 5 minutes over the second half.
Yeah, I think you'd lose more like 5 to 10 minutes and then it probably would be 3:10. It's just a painful way to do it. You were complaining about doing a whole podcast on your marathon, but I would say encourage you, run the 1:29 and then we won't be hard to make the whole podcast about that second half. And then I was crying. I cried at mile 18.
Oh, goodness me.
I thought about the kids. Then I cried at mile 19.
Normally you say with London, I'll visualize myself running down the mile and it's all gone well. None of that's happening yet. Those thoughts aren't entering my head. But the week, much easier, Lent. Actually, no temptations because we didn't go away. We weren't out to the cinema or any restaurants. So that was awesome. I enjoyed that. And we're watching the new series of Fargo over on Amazon Prime. I mentioned last week I like epic sci-fi, closely followed by a very dark, violent comedy. And Fargo is up there with that. Yeah, absolutely loving it. And I mentioned also last week, lots of reflection on the previous week. Is that 1% on a treadmill equivalent to maybe what you would run on the streets? And I hope it's not, because it felt absolutely horrendous trying to do a 5K at 1% incline. The paces on the treadmill and my watch were all over the place, but the effort was, my goodness me, the effort was appropriate. But that felt really tough. And I do hope that theory is wrong, because if it is correct, Manchester is going to be super tough. Thursday, 6 times 1K with 60 seconds recovery. So not a huge... I do all the dates on my workouts. Apologies, listeners. 6 times a K with 60-second recovery. And that is not a lot of recovery, but I wheeled out my new Alpha Flies. Oh, my goodness me. You don't realize, I thought my New Balance, whatever they were, they're carbon-plated shoes, which I've had since 2020. I thought they were fine. It's not until you put on a new pair of shoes, you realize how short your old pair of shoes are. But yeah, Robbo and I, we trotted around the main streets of Shotton doing our 6 times 1K. Safe to say that we loved it. Visualize Jim Walmsley, Tom Evans doing their track sessions that they maybe post over on Instagram.
Okay, and it was who was Jim and who was Tom?
Probably Tom, a bit smaller than Robbo. We crushed it.
What was the pace like for that? Was it where you wanted it to be in the alpha flies? Was it easier?
I had 2 paces scribbled on my hand. One was projected if I was doing a 3:05 marathon, and one was for a 3-hour marathon. And we were hitting the 3-hour marathon paces, and it was tough because basically that it's roughly what my 10K pace should be. I'm not too sure if I could do a 10K at it. That pace.
I do that the whole time. I was doing half marathon pace efforts on the treadmill this morning, and I was like counting down 15 minutes going, so could you run the half marathon?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm super comfortable. super comfortable.
It was tough, but I could have done, if somebody said, Gary, you're going to do 7 or 8 of those, I could have.
Okay. Yeah.
I've been grumpy, but I could have done another couple of those. Friday, Lakeland 100 recce. This was awesome, actually. Blencathra Centre to Ullswater, 20 miles out and back. Not raining, but soaking wet trails. I really hope it dries up quite a lot before the end of July. Fueled like a champ. I am trading that gut, especially for all those carbs I'm going to ram into it at Manchester. Training with a caffeine too. I had a coffee before we started.
I had a coffee. Sorry to interrupt you. I went out for a coffee with a friend on my rest day. Oh my God, the glamour. They normally have this like low caffeine coffee bean in this Ponzi coffee shop we go to. And then he was like, oh no, I've changed the coffee beans. But these are high altitude coffee beans. So the caffeine's about the same as a cup of tea. So
what
I was
does
like,
that
okay.
even mean? High altitude coffee bean.
I was like, okay, he's enjoying telling me about these coffee beans. So I was like, oh, okay, I can do caffeine in a cup of tea. Okay. He lied. It blew my head off, Gary. I was like, went out that shop and I was like,
You're a super responder.
Hello. Where are we going? We're going now. Let's go now. Oh, I did not feel for about 2 hours after that. I was like, these high altitude beans.
You get jittery after a coffee.
I get really jittery after just one coffee. It's not nice. I feel like a little bit.
Yeah. See, I don't get that at all.
But I only drink like one coffee maybe every 2 weeks.
Well, I'm increasing mine because of this Manchester Marathon. But yeah, I told a little fib there. I didn't have a coffee before. I had a coffee afterwards and some of the caffeine gels too. Yeah, no dramas. Fuel like a champ. I enjoyed it. We all enjoyed it. Actually, Sunday, so I didn't really do much Saturday. Just a couple of dog jogs with Rex. Sunday too, I thought, so yeah, I'd already done my long run on Friday, but then I went and did 2 hours on Sunday too, and it's safe to say, yeah, I completely emptied the tank. It wasn't a hard run. It was just, I think the plan said 2.5 hours easy, but I just did just over 2. Yeah, completely pooped. And then on the Monday, yeah, really go for my run yesterday morning. You just ask those questions. How can you run a marathon? Just 10-minute mile and 3 miles a 10-minute mile just feels so tough. But thankfully, the legs have woke up and today is much better. Really good week, hit all the non-negotiables, 3 strength sessions, 2 quality sessions, a bit of maintenance. Yeah, not 1, but 2 long runs, 86 miles, and the Strava bars are very consistent. Super tired, feeling pumped.
Did you have a 7:45 p.m. bedtime?
Oh, a couple of 9 o'clockers though. I like it.
9 o'clock. It's just... Are your kids asleep? Because mine aren't asleep. I go to bed and they're still awake.
No way. Lisa and I, we're the first in bed in our house.
Are you going to bed, Mum? Yes, I am. I'm sorry, but...
Yeah, those days are gone, yeah. This week's Brew the Coaches comes from Patreon, Joe Potter. I imagine quite a lot of our listeners have orthotics in their shoe. My wife does, and I poo-poo the value, but I appreciate there are lots of people out there that it works.
That's kind of you.
Well, I think it shifts the problem somewhere else. That's my opinion, but goodness me, I have zero knowledge on orthotics, so do not listen to me. But yeah, Patreon Joe Potter, he has a question about orthotics. This week's Brew the Coaches question comes from Joe Potter. I have been running for the past 5 years and my running gait has never been amazing. Last summer, I injured my Achilles tendons when doing some hills. I figured this was most likely because of overtraining, so I rested. It's mostly fine now, but sometimes I do get some arch pain. I recently went to podiatrist. They recommended orthotics, which I'd have to wear forever. Is this the only method to fix the problem or the best? Oh, I forgot to mention my pronation is terrible. I land on the outer front edge of my shoes. Thanks, Joe Potter. That seems quite doom and gloom to have a lifetime intervention of orthotics. Yeah, it's not something I've ever had to, luckily I've not had experience with, but any of our coaches, Russell, Eddie?
Yes. So I have had lifelong trouble with Achilles, and in my early 20s, I was, believe it or not, quite a good track runner. I don't like to bang on about it, but Achilles rupture, and I went through the whole gamut of rehab, electromagnetic therapy, shockwave therapy, cortisone injections, acupuncture. There was orthotics, and it cost me thousands of pounds, and none of it worked. I just think the whole thing is not actually addressing the issue, and the issue is that you're weak. So the main things that I learned to do that made me injury proof, and now I don't get Achilles issues. I get the cracking from the scar tissue. One thing that really helped me was barefoot shoes, and just walking around in barefoot shoes all day, just to strengthen and lengthen the lower legs, the calf, the shin, the whole thing. And I never used to do that. I used to be very toey. Your foot is perfect. It's 2 million years of evolution. Supporting your arch is just going to weaken your arch, and that's what orthotics do. So really working on actually addressing the issue, which is going to be just an inherent weakness that we get from being in shoes all the time, walking on stable, even surfaces like concrete and road. So we're not getting that constant need to adjust and adapt to the environment. And that was the main thing that I did. And it took a year of walking with, I sometimes have a rucksack on, sometimes have weight vest on, and do a lot of stuff barefoot on grass, off-road. It was a long-term intervention, and it worked, and I don't have Achilles trouble anymore. The orthotic stuff, I tried it. It just shifted the problem straight onto another place that wasn't used to having more stress on it. I just don't see it working long-term for anyone personally, but I'm about to get torn apart here. Anyway, but that would be my recommendation.
I'd never tear you apart, Russell. I'd be too scared what you might post on Instagram about me. The truth. Eddie's sudden breaking truth. Non-airbrushed pictures.
I've got them more saved up, ready to go.
Oh, Joe. Oh, it's very common. Yeah, running for 5 years, everything's been going amazing. And then the body might just be like, you know, if you're a runner, you're going to get injured. So let's, like Russell said, this sounds like doom and gloom, but it's not. I don't know. Yeah, it sounds like you're running hills and maybe you are into trail running. So orthotics might help you in the initial stages, in that they might take the load off the Achilles while you're managing it and strengthen it. But I agree with Russell. I don't think that you need them forever unless there is something fundamentally wrong with your biomechanics. I was explaining to Russell that I found out the English word of it. It's my flexor retinaculum. I don't want to say that wrong because it sounds like it's not in my ankle, but it is. And I actually shed it. Is that right? It rubbed against my ski boot one season so much that I tore it. And then the ankle tendon, it doesn't... It's holding the ankle tendons in place. And so your ankle basically just like falls apart. So I had no stability in the ankle. Got some funny pictures of like my mates helping me, like anything we had to cross like technical, I'd be like, I can't feel my ankle. It's taken me a long time to rebuild the strength on it. But I've worked with a guy in Chamonix who built me some very light orthotics. They don't put my foot into a rigid place where they didn't move, but they support the ankle so that when I'm running on technical terrain, the ankle is sitting in the right place, because now that I've got all this scar tissue, it's so dull. Anyway, there is a time and place for orthotics, but with an Achilles injury, I do think you can, like Russell said, you can get an Achilles injury right. And I think let's address that problem rather than sticking an orthotic into it. Like Russell did sort of, I always recommend people after they've been to the physio is to read all about the Alfredson protocol. I did this too when I had an Achilles injury. Like Russell, it's something that I have to maintain my Achilles because they like to be really short and angry most of the time. Have a read about Alfredson, what he did. Basically, he blew his Achilles and then he rebuilt them, which is pretty much what Russell did as well. Is that you have to load the tendon in order to get a better any tendon. Anyone who's had hamstring issues or anything knows that actually resting doesn't make them better. You have to load them, but it has to be a very careful process. So Joe, I would say maybe find a really good physio who wants to get you back running well, or maybe a personal trainer who's got some experience with that, who can help you rebuild this Achilles and load it appropriately. And also your foot strength. So if you are a big pronator, there's loads of toe walks, heel walks, picking up pens, picking up tea towels, doing like round the clock with your feet. So actually it's like often we think, oh, why do I have to do this? This is adding like 20 minutes worth of work into my day. But if you want to run, it might be something that, yes, you don't need to wear orthotics for the rest of your life, but you will always need to work on your foot strength and mobility for the rest of your life for like 15, 20 minutes every other day. But I would say look at that and also look at the rest of your body. Look at right from the top of the chain, your hips, your glutes, your hamstrings, everything. When we start running, we often can have 2 or 3 years of really good running and we feel great and we're really strong. And then slowly as your body can cope with more volume, you do longer races, you go, oh, actually, the biomechanics are not quite right for that. And an injury comes in. And then we spend the next few years going, but I was so perfect. What happened? It's a very common story. So go back to the roots, Joe. Strengthen those Achilles, get a good team around you. We're not saying just throw the orthotics out the window, but maybe look at other ways to support that rehab as well. Russell's saying throw. I'm saying maybe just keep them in the back room and use them when appropriately.
And also, if you're worried about time, I'd sacrifice a little bit of running. I quite often...
Gary, you are. That is just absolute fire I'll walk from your mouth.
I'll maybe walk the last, say, half a mile, but I'll do some foot drills as opposed to just adding something extra to my
walking
day.
Is so underrated, and I'll bang on about this the rest of my days. Walking is so good for the body.
Always barefoot, pretty much always barefoot around the hall too.
It's great. It's hard in the winter and the dark, and if you have to hop into the supermarket, it's looking a bit silly, but easier for Trish in Australia for sure. Barefoot is great. Barefoot shoes.
Thongs all the way here. Thongs. Do you find that thongs cripple your feet though, Trish?
No, I'm barefoot a lot. So I'm with Russell. When I'm inside the house, I'm barefoot all the time. I mean, to be fair, like over here, I'm in thongs like all the time anyway, unless I'm in trainers.
What a picture.
I would just suggest as well, Joe, not maybe for me, like Eddie says, I constantly have to work on my Achilles issues, tight calves, but I never run barefoot or even in barefoot shoes, just too much of a jump for me. We've actually evolved running in shoes. Most of us would come through puberty wearing shoes. And that's very hard to then backtrack on all of that growth in your body, just being accustomed to that. So it's just, the whole Born to Run saga that went on ended up with a lot more injuries than less because people were jumping into this barefoot revolution too quickly. And some people do manage it. I never managed to run in barefoot shoes for any amount of time, but definitely walking and doing as much as you can around running.
Good luck, Joe. Keep us posted.
Good luck, Joe.
You got this, Joe. This week, our interview is with David Bone, Tunnel Ultra champ, 2023 spine race finisher and holder of 115 FKTs. Mic drop. You're going to love this. What a guy. What a radiator. Enjoy our chat with Davy Bone.
This week, we are joined by David Bone, winner of the 2024 Tunnel Ultra. Humid Eddie for quite a few miles on the Pennine Way back in 2023. And it's safe to say you have fully embraced FKTs, David. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Gary. Eddie, I've missed you, Eddie. It's been too long, my friend.
It's been too long. I mean, I remember the exact moment the last time our skin touched each other was when I remember we were in the what's it called? The pub at the end, the border, the law. What's it called? At Kirk Yettam. Anyway, we were in there, and you were like,
the pub where you get your feet checked.
We were getting our feet rubbed, and you were like, Eddie, I'm gonna go. I'll meet you in the bar or something later. And I was just like, what? You're gonna go to a bar later? I was like, yeah, I'm struggling right now. We'll try not to digress too much about Spine Chat, but no doubt it will happen as we.
I hope we do.
I hope we do. We could do a whole episode, couldn't we, about the Cheviots? What happened on the Cheviots?
Stays on the Cheviots. We've got so much to cover, but before we get into that, ask all our guests, where are you? What's the view from your window? And have you been for a run today?
I am in London. I am in Hackney. I recently got made the running mayor of Hackney, which is a great honour.
Yeah,
it's an incredible part of East London. Not as many hills as we would like. Yeah, there's some scaffolding wars going on outside the window, Gary. I've got some very loud and slightly expletive gang of workmen. So yeah, it could be a colourful episode, this one.
Fruity language. How did you become a running mayor of Hackney?
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it? So the running mayor scheme was set up around the pandemic, and it was around the sort of time where, there were all the rules about, what you could or couldn't do. So there's a great guy called Scott Kane, and he thought, wouldn't it be a great idea if there were sort of local ambassadors who would just help people sort of navigate that pretty funky period. So yeah, about 3-4 years ago, it was a pretty successful thing for about 6 months. Then it sort of slightly tailed off. And myself and a dear friend, Tom, who is the running mayor of Ealing, we're trying to inject a little bit of energy back into that space. Yeah.
I've got so many questions about this.
I know, it's pretty wild. Episode 3.
Do you wear the full gold chain and sort of a plumed hat?
Eddie, you know me, don't you? So obviously
every run.
Pretty much the only reason I signed up to this was for the pomp. And I heartedly recommend all listeners to go onto Instagram and search for a guy called The Real Hackney Dave. He's an incredible artist. And so I've contacted Dave about getting me a suit made up, because obviously I'm the other Dave from Hackney. So yeah, a bit of a collab going on there.
Yeah, love it. What's the Ealing posse are going to be well gel when you turn up at the next presidential meeting with a trumpet.
Can you imagine?
Like West Side Story when two boroughs meet. Sorry, I interrupted. Have you been for a run today?
I haven't been for a run today. I'm sure we're going to get into this, but it's a couple of weeks since the tunnel. I did a sort of relatively big run at the weekend, which kind of destroyed me. Actually, you know what it's like, Eddie. You just so want to kind of get back into doing things normally. But my feet are still quite badly blistered, and a bit of knee soreness and shin stuff. So actually, I did a bit of a walk yesterday, and I haven't left the house yet today, Gary.
It sounds like it's not safe today to leave the house anyway.
It's definitely not safe.
Flying around. I'm really pleased I saw you say that, because I saw a picture that you'd posted saying about that run, and I was like, Whoa, he's recovered so quick. And that always annoys me when people recover really quick. So I love your honesty
annoying,
that you're
isn't
like,
it?
I
I
really
annoyed
hate
myself, Eddie. It was like the ego just went absolutely crazy.
But I don't think it is the ego. I think it's just like that's what you do. You know, that's your weekend vibe and you just want to get back. And it's just a horrible, like, wait. We don't even wait, do we? We just keep trying. And basically, eventually, after about 8 weeks, the body goes, okay, you feel okay, you can get moving again. But it's a slow process. Right. Let's talk a little bit about the tunnel. So we had a count back. We went deep in our preparation for the interview, and we saw that there were 36 starters, big field, and only 7 finishers. So that is mad. I'm not surprised because I think it sounds horrendous. Anyway, tell us, people are listening, they don't know what the tunnel is. Tell us what this is.
I guess, there's so many sort of rabbit holes with the whole sort of concept. I mean, it's the tunnel itself is in Bath near Bristol. And it was 100 plus years ago, it was a railway tunnel. And more recently, it's been kind of converted into a sort of nicely groomed cycle tunnel. So there's actually 2 tunnels with a gap in between, which sort of cuts through a valley and has become a sort of a commuter belt cycle tunnel. So the tunnel that gets used by this race is 1.1 mile long, so it's actually longer than a mile. Sheesh. And the creator of the event, Mark Cobain, sort of created this thing. So you go out and back, which is 1 lap, and you've basically got to complete 100 laps. So they call it sort of a 200-mile event. But I think interestingly, Eddie, is that, I don't know if you guys are sort of familiar, or your listeners, with Mark. Mark's a sort of like sadist who kind of creates these events, which he truly hopes that you'll hate, and that, people will DNS and won't finish, so the fewer the finishes, the better, really, from Mark.
I love that race director philosophy. Yeah. The fewer the finishes. So your last big event, am I right in saying, was the Spine? Have you done anything in between, like mega in between the Spine and this?
Yeah, no, I hadn't actually. It was a sort of strange one, because if you sort of go back a year before you and I did the Spine, I'd always had this sort of idea that, doing one kind of massive race per year was pretty good, was kind of enough. And I would find, more kind of community-based things to do. So like Bob Graham Recce's, or, as you said, FKTs, Gary. I sort of found myself like following the same pattern with the same types of races that I was doing. So previously to the Spine, I did the Spartathlon a couple of times. I did a lot of kind of road-based stuff, or obviously living in the south of England. When you do things like Centurion's South Downs Way 100, you don't quite think you're in the Alps, do you? Or...
That's where I saw you.
Oh, that's where we saw each other.
Huge smooch in the South Downs Way.
We did. We had a style hug, didn't we? How could we forget?
How could we forget? Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Totally.
So it's quite a nice story, actually. So myself and my coach, my running coach, Paula was primarily coaching an incredible lady called Hannah Rickman. Hannah had just come second in the Challenger North in 2022, and she did this thing where she got to the wall at Kirk Yetholm, and she didn't touch the wall. She didn't kiss the wall. She just had this massive sort of epiphany that, she had to come back try and come back and do the full Spine. And she contacted us and we were chatting about it. And I just said, that's just so amazing that you had such a strong feeling. And, I'd, like so many of your listeners, I just spent the entire week watching that year of the Spine, and, just got so into it that I was just like, I need to stop doing the other types of races that I'd done and just sign up for something that was sort of massively out of my comfort zone. And Eddie, as you know, the list is pretty long in the spine. Do you like cold? No. Can you navigate? No. Do you like wearing kit? No. Like, it was like, this was definitely the race that I was not born to do. And then sort of fast forward a year, when we finished, I just instantly had that same feeling. It's just like, well, what else is out there that just totally fulfills that idea of, I wouldn't typically normally do that type of event. And with a lot of these really big events, as you know, they're not easy to get in. And you do need to apply like a year. You do need to sort of plan out a year or 2 years in advance. So it just landed at that time. The BBC did a massive coverage of the Tunnel 2023. And I just signed up. And when I signed up, I was like, did that, but I don't need to tell anybody. I can pull out whenever I want. Okay. It's just between me and the Tunnel. It seems such a long time away, but yeah, fast forward and there I was, And so
crazy. How did you prepare for that? Is it all in the dark?
I mean, there's so many sort of mad things. I mean, first of all, again, like with this guy, Mark, he sent, an email out to, I think there were something like 45, I think there's like 45 people that can start. So obviously, as you said, Eddie, there were close to 10 people that for various reasons didn't even start this year. You literally get one sheet of A4 of like the rules for the tunnel. And every sentence starts with no. So like no crew, no spectators, no headphones, no fun.
No headphones.
No headphones. And you go, okay, so you don't really know what you're supposed to do, but you definitely know the things you're not supposed to do, So I actually know the person that won the 2023 version. An absolutely brilliant guy called David Harvey. He's like a kind of like rock star that lives down in Portsmouth. He was super kind. We spent an hour and I said to him, I want to go to the tunnel and, I want to recce it. It sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? But I want to experience it. And he was just like, whoa, do not go to the tunnel. Only experience the tunnel the first moment you step into the tunnel. And I was like, that's a bit weird, isn't it? But he's so right. It's just, it's like the antithesis of the Pennine Way. It's just like, I personally love nothing more than, taking people up and doing recce's to Pennine Way. I could do that forever. But this is just like, don't go to the tunnel. It will just put you off and it will just throw you so many sort of weird vibes, So yeah, it was just literally, we got to the start line, which in itself was classic kind of Mark Cobain, because you can't actually get to the start of the tunnel without walking like half an hour. Like, you get dropped off on this little country road and you have to carry all your kit. And Eddie, you know what it's like whenever you do a really big event, you can't help but thinking, how am I going to get home? And what state am I going to be in? So I was just sort of making this really long trudge.
Thinking.
Start. I met this really lovely guy called Alan from Edinburgh, who was actually doing the tunnel with his girlfriend.
Oh my goodness.
And the three of us walked this epically long walk. And then when we got to the base of the tunnel, there was just this swamp. There'd been so much rain that there was literally like a foot of, this sort of swampy water. One side of the swamp was a portaloo, which was locked. And then because of the race rules, you can only run in the tunnel. Everything else you have to do outside of the tunnel. So, like there were competitors that had got there 2 hours before the race started. And so if you were there first, you put your stuff as close to the entrance to the tunnel. And I basically got there, like I was one of the last to turn up, and I got dropped off by Eddie, if you remember my wife, Gabby. She's a little bit of a pocket rocket. And she was just like, she looked at me and she said, there's no way you're leaving your stuff at the back of this lift. So she just picked up my box and she went right down the front and she just rammed it between the first and the third runner and then walked off again. So I'd sort of had quite a conveniently placed box of stuff and sat around waiting for it to start.
Is it dark in the tunnel? Like, is there any light? What is the head torch situation?
It's totally mad. So it's got some like low level lighting from the hours of 5 a.m. until 11 p.m. So you can go in the tunnel and you can walk and cycle without a head torch, but it is that low level lighting, so you have to try and adjust your eyes and you're not particularly, you're not kind of seeing much because of the low lighting, if that makes sense. You're not really sort of picking up too much definition, but at 11 o'clock for 6 hours, those lights go off and it's completely pitch black. So you basically have to have your sort of head torch on. Obviously, that's where it gets all super, super weird because, you either point your head torch down on the floor, which is like, asphalt, or you sort of stare towards the rocks, which were, even in the day, normal hours, were just full of dead bodies and like crooks and crannies, And it was just that sort of mad thing. Like you say, you didn't have to invent this stuff, It was pretty spooky just the first moment you were in the tunnel,
Is it straight or has it got a bend? So can you see the end?
What it's like with these sort of many hours races, you feel #normal, don't you, for 5 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, but then it's something kind of completely. So in those first few hours, the tunnel seemed like relatively normal. So what I mean
safe
by
place.
that,
safe place. Yeah.
So there's a very long straight bit to the tunnel in the middle, but either ends it sort of bends to get to that. So it's like a scale. It reminded me of a Scalextrics track, like where you decided like the first bit from the start was your little short bit. So you sort of bend round to the left. Then there was this almighty long bit which had a hill. So in the beginning of the race, it felt relatively straight, but by the end, it was like on your treadmill, a heavy incline. And then when you got to the end of the straight, it had a slightly longer bend to the left. So again, in the first sort of few hours of the race, you just sort of, you would do this thing relatively normally, but as you got many hours in, I started to crane my neck, almost desperately seeking the lights, like this light. But actually, I mean, it wasn't much of a light. It wasn't like this sort of glorious beam of something. Yeah, there was so little hallelujah moment. That on the second day, it actually snowed. So like, all of the stuff outside of the tunnel was covered in about several inches of snow. And there was actually like the area of the beginning of the tunnel that had a leak. Had a lot of leaks. So there was effectively like like when you do a big city marathon and it's really hot and they always have those mist machines.
Oh, yes.
You go towards them. This was like the opposite of that. It was like, imagine being in the spine and someone erecting a mist machine that you were drawn towards just to kind of get wet. So
they always take my breath away when I go through those.
Yeah. At the end of every lap, you just basically had to go through this shower, which because of the snow, like the water was icy cold. And it was just, it was not nice.
So because you'd not been allowed to go in the tunnel before, what was it like when the race started and you first did your first lap of the tunnel? Were you like, oh my God, I've got to do this for 200 miles? Or were you like, yeah, it's not too bad. I got this. No problem.
I mean, there was definitely, you and I, we experienced a little bit of the first day of the spine together, didn't we? I was with Eloise and we were sort of powering a little bit of a beautiful section. And I sort of like, because that was my only experience of something for 40, 50 hours, I sort of had broken up the potential of this race into various blocks. So my first block, again, sadist Mark, starts this race at 3:30 p.m. in the Friday afternoon. So obviously you're pretty knackered by the time you start. And the first thing you think is like, when am I going to sleep? Because you're so close to the first night. So I just said to myself, okay, starts at 3:30. We've got, so many hours until 11 o'clock when the lights are going to go off. So I was just like, let's dial this down. Let's just go really easy. Let's have a smile. Let's enjoy yourself. So yeah, for the first few hours, the race is the busiest. You've got the most amount of people in there. There's the most amount of energy. There's lots of, when you pass people, Mark said, no talking in the tunnel, keep to the left. But, that went out the window pretty quickly. People were quite happy and upbeat, sharing a bit of banter and stuff. I kind of wasn't thinking about the tunnel so much at that point. I was just genuinely thinking we're going to be here for a very long time.
Yeah.
And, we're going to have lots of like horror moments, aren't we? There's going to be some mega lows. Let's just try not to have a low too soon. And let's just do.
I like that on a really long event. I'm always like, keep the doors and the windows totally open wide, because you want to chat, you want to talk, you want to look around, you want to smile, because don't close them down, because when you do close them down, very hard to open them up again. And that energy it takes to close them down and then get into that, you don't want that. And in a race like this, you don't really even want that for it's really awful to say, but the first 20 hours, do you want to try and keep the energy around, use other people?
I actually had, Eddie, so the crazy thing is, from that point of view, is I had my first big low after 5 hours.
And you do, don't you? Because even though you're like, I'm totally relaxed, it's too easy, and then you're like,
I'm so cool with this tunnel.
I'm so cool. And then you're like, oh no, I'm really tired and I don't like this. And I've only done 50 miles, not even 50 miles. 5 hours in. So how far had you gone then? How many tunnels?
I just have to share this sort of backstory so you've got a bit of context. So basically, and this is my Sophie Power moment. I don't think I'd ever had this in my life, but Sophie does this like nobody else on the planet. So, you go to your biggest event you've ever done, and you've got a childcare story, and you're actually telling people. So on the day of the race, it was my daughter's 20th birthday, but she's at university, Amelie, she's in university. So she wasn't that bothered anyway, she probably didn't even know I was in the tunnel.
Just pop some money in the account, Dad,
That's right, yeah. So we're heading to the tunnel. Gabby's driving me there. And she's like, okay, so I'm dropping you off at the tunnel, and then I'm going to, there's a place called Babington House, which is...
Love it.
Oh my God, yeah. She's okay, Eddie, isn't she?
She's okay.
Soho
She's
House.
Got the right... The tunnel, Babington House. Oh.
So she basically looks me in the eye, dead-eyed, Eddie, and she goes, there's absolutely no way I'm picking you up on the Saturday. If you DNF, you just sit in the tunnel till my spa treatment's over, and I'll pick you up sometime Sunday. So I knew that. I knew.
Good.
Whatever went on.
You. Yeah, I love it, Gabby.
But then just to kind of take this to another level, my Sophie Power moment. So it's actually my son's birthday 2 days after my daughter's. So on the Sunday, my son Jarvis, he was 17, which meant that he was being left home alone, teenager, home alone. And Gabby thought that the race was finishing at 10 a.m. on the Sunday and not 10 p.m. So she's in the car, she's about to drop me off, and she goes, oh, by the way, you need to get a shift on, because I'll be picking you up around lunchtime to go back and see what mess our house in. And it was the nonsense of it. Like Sophie, when she goes, like, I have no choice. I have to leave UTMB at 4 to get on that flight to pick my son up from nursery. It became a bit of a real thing, you know. So after 5 hours of having such a crushing low, I thought, but hang on, I can't go anywhere, can I? Because my lift isn't picking me up.
Yeah.
And also this means I'm suddenly feeling like even finishing this thing at 10 p.m. doesn't feel like realistic, you know. So I had to have a massive talk to myself, and I had my own Leon moment, Eddie, where I sort of thought I need to find a little friend in the tunnel.
You love a friend.
I love a friend. I had to have a buddy moment, and I basically found the perfect buddy, this incredible guy called Carl Baxter, who's mad as a box of Fruit Loops. He's literally one of the maddest characters out there. And he was just so happy. He was just so jolly. He was skipping along. And so I spent a few hours with him just like listening to his trucker stories. And he'd previously done the tunnel before. He was one of 5 people that year who were coming back to try and do it for the second time. And
goodness.
so I reset Eddie and got to that 11 o'clock point by having some hang time with Carl.
We all need a Carl.
We all need a Carl. How long did each lap roughly take you? I presume there wasn't anything at the other end, knowing Mark, you'd just turn around and come back.
So there's basically, a timing mat each end of the tunnel, and you were suggested that you cross the timing mat because there was no like mobile phone reception in the tunnel. This was a bit weird, actually, because obviously for such a long race, in order to get mobile phone reception, you had to sort of go about 50 yards, maybe more, away from the tunnel. So you would see people literally just sort of standing like lemons with their arm in the air, hoping to download a few WhatsApp messages and then going back in the tunnel. And I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. That's completely ridiculous. You've got to be efficient. Obviously, that didn't last the whole event, but I held it in the first bit. But so, you crossed the mat and you were told to basically, don't rush back over the mat because it might not pick you up. And again, like in the early part of the race, all of these things seemed to be really easy. But as the race progressed, I did that thing where I would go back into the tunnel and I would go, did I cross the mat?
For sure. That's what I was going to ask you. Like,
ping?
Yeah.
So I went back at least on 3 occasions. There was, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but there's an absolutely brilliant film that was made of this year's tunnel, and there was a French runner, a brilliant guy called Christian, and he brought a film crew from a big thing called Le Parisien, which is like, our version of like The Guardian or Times or whatever. And so they created this film in French, which you can see. What happened was I'd crossed the mat at one point and I'd lit, like there are markers in the tunnel. So like, say you were halfway in the tunnel, it would show you what distance you've got to the tunnel one way and what distance you just traveled every 100 meters. So it became quite a massive focal point. Later on in the race, you'd sort of be staring at the floor, you'd see where you were. So I got about 600 meters into the tunnel and I went, I don't think I crossed the line. And this was like probably the middle of night 2. And I went back and this French film crew were there talking to me in sort of fuzzy French. And I was like saying, did I cross the line? And they were like, we've absolutely no idea. But, I was just like, it was just a very surreal experience,
Did you go into it as a race? And how did you keep track of actually where you were in the race?
Going back to my Sophie Power moment. So I'd done a lot of, I do like the kind of geeky, nerdy side of all this sport. And so, I'd looked at the previous years. I'd looked at, where people were DNFing. Psychologically, you can always tell in races, like when people, they exit a race because, they need to find transport home or to help their crew or something or other. So there was a lot of people DNFing late on the Saturday, in previous years and stuff like that. So I had this thing, Gary, in my mind, which was, I was really obsessed by, Big's Backyard Ultra last year, where all the world records were broken. And I'd listened to a lot of the Harvey Lewis podcasts before doing the tunnel. And I kind of got transfixed by 48 hours, 200. So if you do the backyard format, every 24 hours, you do 100 miles.
Yeah.
That's like, so if you keep a consistency going, you will do 200 miles in 48 hours. So the cutoff in the tunnel is 55 hours. And again, it's so fascinating to see how the brain for certain people just draws themselves into the 55 hours. Whereas I was just like, just think of it as a 48-hour race. Yeah. Think of the first 100 miles. Where are you in comparison to that, 24-hour? If you're doing 20 hours, that's probably too fast. If you're doing 22, 23, that's probably bang on. And if the cutoff, there was only one cutoff, which was 27 and a half hours. If you hadn't reached 27 and a half hours for 100 miles, then you were pulled out of the race. I knew that only one person had ever gone under 48 hours before. This brilliant guy called Guy Betterson had done 43 hours. Yeah. And like I said, I was thinking, okay, well, if you do 48 hours, you'll probably be, you're probably doing quite well in the race. But that was enough for me. I just wanted to be a tunnel finisher. I didn't want to do, as Eddie, as you know extremely well, no one can start the spine, can they? And think they've got it done by day 3. Something could happen in day 4 or day 5. And you just have to treat it that way, So I'd broken the race, Gary, down into 4 lots of 50 miles, and I don't think you can ever think you can walk death march something like this until you're perhaps in that last 50 miles, because if you had an injury or something with 100 miles, I think that would be the sort of limits of how far you'd want to go, trying to sort of drag your legs up and done that tunnel.
27 hours, that's quite tasty just for 100 miles. Yeah. You can't hang about.
Yeah, I mean, we're all familiar, aren't we, with that sort of like, the 100 mile itself is an epic distance. I coach a lot of people. It's a dream level. And like you said, there are races where you'd be very happy for a 30-hour, that's a sort of cut-off finish. Yeah. And anything under 24 hours, to do that in 24 hours is pretty amazing. So yeah, there's some real small margins, aren't there, when you're considering the sort of pace that, this was effectively 8 marathons, 32 10Ks, 64 park runs, So there was a timing company, with the mats. So I knew that at any point I could get my phone out my bag and look at the timing company's website themselves, which would effectively just tell you how many laps you'd done out of the 100 laps. But I knew what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to use the phone, and I didn't want to be doing that, going 50 meters out of the tunnel thing for the first 24 hours. But then when I got to around 24 hours, I was just like, I felt like I'd perhaps done the first 100 miles quicker than I perhaps had planned. And, I was then worried that I was going to hit some bad periods for the second one. So I really wanted to know, in terms of my watch, Eddie, that seemed to be throwing off some pretty weird data from the beginning. So I kind of gave up worrying about sort of pace and stuff. I mean, you can't help but looking at other competitors, can't you? And there was 2 or 3 runners that were in the first 6 hours running like they were running a 50K ultra marathon. It was wearing alpha flies, and they were just you would hear this like almighty clomping noise in the tunnel. That was just a horrible sound. And when all of those are DNF'd, there was a sort of calmer vibe. Once the sort of 35 runners got down to about 20, there was these much longer gaps in the tunnel. So you would dial in a lot more in terms of the faces of the other runners, and there was all, in terms of like the sort of like the race mentality, you know, I would sort of look up at, you know, especially that long straight of the tunnel, and I'd be flagging a little bit, and I'd think, oh, that person looks like they're running pretty hard. So I would start running so that when they sort of saw me, I looked like
they were
I was
impressed.
running. They were impressed, Eddie.
Yeah.
And then I'd do that thing, like I'd run past them, and I'd think to myself, how far do you have to run so that they're listening to you with running feet before you can start slowing down, but they still think you're running, unless they've actually stopped and turned round during the tunnel. So I thought about that a lot.
It's fascinating. Yeah, you've got to break the heart. If I go past somebody, I need to break their heart. I need to have enough confidence to go past them and break their heart at the same time. But I'll freshen up. I'll get my buff out. I'll wipe my face, wipe all the sweat off and everything. I'll just have this facade of coolness, and then really, that's not the actual tale. I'm curious. Yeah, we talked about the snow on the second day, and obviously you're going out into cold conditions. But what was it like? Yeah, how did you kind of regulate your temperature during the run? I imagine it might have actually got quite hot at some points in the tunnel.
I'd say that was, for me, the most horrific part of the whole experience. Was that you know how people are really cruel, aren't they, to us runners, and they don't realize that, you know, the true hardship we go through, even just on a, you know, early weekend 30
minute run.
They just don't understand it.
Heroes.
Total heroes. So I'd got all of these really mean messages saying, you know, you're okay this weekend because you're going to be in a tunnel, whereas we're going to be outside getting wet. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be all right. So you got to the tunnel. You know, it's a tunnel, isn't it? Like one end of the tunnel is totally exposed. So, you know, the weather was, you know, it was like a turbine in your face, you know.
Was it like Game of Thrones when they come out that cliff and it's like winter?
Exactly. I think they should revamp the tunnel where you have to come as a Game of Thrones character, preferably like with a massive shield and a big. So like you got to the end of the tunnel, and like I said, it was the repetition. You'd get there and you'd feel so cold that, you know, if you were wearing a jacket, you would do the zip of the jacket up. If you had the buff, obviously, if you had your Tea and Trails buff, you'd pull it over your face, you'd pull your woolly hat down, you put your glove. And if you didn't have this stuff, especially in the second night, you would literally in the dark be, you know, looking around to try and find more warm stuff. But as you went back into the middle of the tunnel, you know, like half a mile inside the tunnel, you would just suddenly feel like you were in the tropics. I mean, to the point where there would be like sweat gushing down your bits. Like, there'd be like,
Gary's dream. Gary's dream.
This is like 5 out of 5 on TripAdvisor, isn't it? It's like, but as you can imagine, like the gushy water bit started to really mess with the Vaselined parts. And I just got the world's worst chafing after about like 24, 30 hours because of that constant, you know, like say not being able to regulate your temperature. And it just happening so frequently. You were saying before, Eddie, like you were doing this lap somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. Stuff's happening again and again. Like it's Groundhog Day, isn't it? So like as soon as you sort of, Gary, I would be pulling my top up to reveal, like, you know, my six pack.
Yeah. Well, I knew what was coming.
And then like a few minutes later, I'd be like Kenny from South Park. You know, I'd literally have just a little pair of eyes.
That's insane.
Coming through the coat. And I really felt cold. One of the weirdest experiences, and I don't even remember this from the spine, Eddie, was I had cold shoulder blades, and I would literally have to grab my hands and really massage my shoulder blades to try and warm them up. It was just really got inside there. It was a really strange feeling. We got to the beginning of the second night. Like the first night when the lights went off, it was like being at a carnival. Like, you know, everyone was so upbeat. Oh, the lights are going to go off. We're going to have our head torches on. We're going to have a party, you know, singing in the tunnel. But it was like during the second day, it was like everybody in the tunnel was like, oh my God, the horror of the lights going off. Because what you would do is you would go to the portaloo and you couldn't see how to clean yourself up. You know, you wouldn't know if you'd done it all right. You couldn't find your food. You couldn't find where your stuff was, all of that. So you knew coming into the second night, you had 6 hours of like not being able to do those things. So I was just like, right, I haven't slept at all so far in this race. I'm going to grab my first sleep before the lights go out so I could wake up, properly see where I was, you know, sort out a few things. And there's an incredible lady called Karen who is like the sort of deputy to Mark in this event. She's the nice one. She's still sticking to the rules, you know, like Mark's rules. But she came over to me and she said, are you okay? And I said, look, I just can't work my phone. I just can't set the alarm. I said, would you mind like letting me know when like 15 minutes are up? She's like, yeah, no worries. So I went to try and get some sleep, and it was just horrific. You know, I don't know if you've seen the pictures that David Miller took, but it was just like that, you know, that sort of, you know, the tin foil, the foil stuff you get at the end of a race, like anything you could get hold of wrapped around you. I just couldn't sleep in that moment. And then I heard a voice say, like, do you want to go and sort of get out of here, do a lap together? And because it was sort of pitch black, I don't know what had happened, whether I just sort of got my timings all wrong, but the light had gone now. So I couldn't actually see who this person was. I actually thought it was a completely different person to Kevin, who it was. But we literally sort of, you know, got up. I just didn't know, you know, whether I'd done any of the things that I was supposed to do, but I just took advantage of someone saying, you know, let's just keep moving. Let's try and warm up here and get the show back on the road, you know.
Was it as bad as Hut 1, where we sat on the bench and just longed for life to finish, that we knew we had to go back out, and that guy with the beard was just lying on the bench and you and I were like crammed up on the edge just going
That was single-handedly the scariest moment of my entire life. That was with you in Hut 1. I mean, you can't mention that without mentioning the fact that you'd almost died literally the hour before that. You'd sent out an SOS message, hadn't you?
Well, I rang the because I fell asleep in the snow, and then I woke up and I thought they'd finished the race and left me, and I couldn't. I was like, how long have I been asleep for? So I rang them up and I was like, don't disqualify me. Don't say anything if you're going to disqualify me. But I think you finished the race and I'm still out in the Cheviot because I think I've been asleep for like 2 days. And they were like, hi, Eddie. No,
hi, Eddie.
You've stopped for about 30 seconds. They were like, if you wait there for about 5 minutes, you're going to see some head torches and David and Leon are coming up behind you. And I was like, oh my. And then do you remember I was like, guys, it's me. Hi.
There was a few icy tears, wasn't there?
Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right though, because we went, didn't we, Eddie? We went on to like this hut, and you know the overriding thing for me about the Spine, because the organisers use the title, don't they? The world's like most brutal event. It's like it's the kindest, it's the most beautifully warm event on the planet. It's just like, you know, people who live on the Pennine Way, they open up their house and they make a massive vat of soup. And in our case, Eddie, they wouldn't let us leave until we'd eaten all the soup. But like the tunnel is the opposite. It's like,
yeah,
you know,
because like in the Spine, even though it is horrendous and it's brutal and it's frightening and it's all, you do know that you have a button on your shoulder and you press that, and within 20, 30 minutes, you can be safe and you can be warm and somebody's watching you all the time. You know that. Yeah. So, but I can imagine.
And they're nice people as well, Eddie. This is the difference,
they're nice. They're going to be lovely. They're going to be Lizzies who are going to come and get you. I can imagine in the tunnel when that dark, you're like Nobody's coming to get, and Gabby's not coming to get you. She's got
She's
face mask
definitely
on.
not coming to get me.
That must have been, yeah. Oh my God, that must have been the low of getting up, going again.
Spoiler, you had a super successful race. What do you think you did differently to the other runners who maybe didn't have as successful day?
It's a great question, isn't it? I mean, I often taught in our sort of little runners sort of coaching space. We always talk about sort of like the Venn diagram. And like a Venn diagram is typically on the one side of the Venn diagram, you've got the stuff that the three of us do all the time and what we feel is our comfort zone. So it might be like, obviously for the three of us, it's running, but it's like where we run, isn't it? We love outdoors and we love mountains and we love nature and we love kind of community vibe of it all. So then to me, like the tunnel was the other Venn diagram. And I was like curious to know where the overlap was. So I think a lot of the other competitors in this race come from a different world to us. I say that in the nicest possible way. The people doing the tunnel are also doing the bridge. Okay. And they're also doing like these kind of long distance, on their own solo stuff. What I observed inside the tunnel was that there was a lot of people in their own headspace. They were kind of locked into what they had to do to try and get their thing done. Yeah. Whereas it's a completely different vibe for me. I'm always like, what do we all have to do to all finish the tunnel? Like I say, I couldn't understand that. What is the vibe where only a few of us are going to finish here? It's just like, what can we all do to kind of pull together? But there wasn't a massive overlap. So there wasn't a lot of people behaving like that. So it was very difficult to get into that kind of groove of like, sharing stuff and helping each other. And I'd spent more of my time, Gary, going back into the places that I knew worked well for me, So whether that was the sort of buddy up system, or, just thinking of my whys, why I was there and what I wanted to get out of it, and just sort of kind of going deep with that stuff,
I love the buddy. Sometimes I prefer the miles on my own, but it's quite powerful. Quite powerful having a buddy.
Shall we go on to highs and lows? Because I'm sure there's some of those too. Let's
talk about highs and lows. And
okay.
In terms of one of the highs, we have to mention a certain Mr. Miller, David Miller, the photographer. I was doing a bit of work prior to the tunnel with this brand new company. They're called Hilo. I genuinely recommend your listeners check them out because they're a sort of sustainable, lead first running sort of apparel company.
Okay.
And they do some incredible stuff. They work, very closely with some other organizations that I know that are like Patreons to Teen Trails. And I think it's a really important thing out there. So I'd contacted our friend Mark, the race director, and said, Hilo have very kindly said that they would provide a photographer to come down and take some pictures. Like, is that okay? And he said his response was, it was quite a short response. He says, we've got the BBC One show, we've got a French film crew, and we've got David Miller here. I think that's enough. I'm sure he didn't say bye, Mark. And I thought, actually, I mean, to be fair, that's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so when I turned up and I saw the massive puddle and the portaloo, and I even forgot to say there was a gazebo the other side of the puddle with Dave, the pot noodle guy. But I never went and had a pot noodle, so that's why we couldn't talk about the nutrition strategy. I didn't have any pot noodles.
No.
So I thought, this is a sham, isn't it? There's no BBC, and there's no French film crew, and there's definitely no David Miller. I just thought, this is like I've been properly stitched up. So I was about, I don't know, something like 30 hours into the race, and it was a long stretch where I was on my own. I was just sort of lapping, just in my own little space. And there was just this guy who was in the slap bang in the middle of the tunnel. And what was brilliant was he didn't seem to be taking any photos of the runners. He only seemed to be taking a picture of like the wall. And I thought, this is really interesting. So I'd lap by, didn't say anything, lap again, didn't say anything. And then I started talking to him.
There's no rush. We've got plenty of time.
We've got all night here, Eddie, haven't we? Let's pace this conversation out a bit. And then I just suddenly, I had this little bit of a moment where I thought, I wonder if this is David Miller. I wonder if it's not a sham. And so, but he was, because it was cold, obviously cold for him. He was just standing there. He was like, he had a big jacket on and a sort of hat pulled over his head. I couldn't really see who it was. So after about the fourth lap and a bit of banter, I decided to say, like, are you David? And he said, yes, I am. So I kept on running and I thought, okay, well, I mean, it might be another David, yeah? It might not actually be David Miller. So I did another lap, bit more chat, then did another lap and thought, this is it. I'm going to ask him if he is David Miller. And it was David Miller. And he must have spent somewhere between 6 to 8 hours in the tunnel. And what he was doing, he had this, he explained to me afterwards, he had this like brand new Leica camera. And he was doing this like really amazing technique where he was focusing on like this graffitied number on the wall, the number 13. And he would take a photo of the number, but then he would like flick his hand away to sort of get a blurred image of the runner running past the number. And he took this extraordinary picture of me sort of like in ghost form, like floating past the number 13. Yeah, I mean, it was just an incredible experience to have someone of, David's talent. And, this is something, obviously, I think we've all seen some of the work he's done at the Barkley Marathons and other such iconic events. The fact that he was in the tunnel seems such a bad behavior zone. But yeah, like he was clearly an absolute craftsman. He was such a beautiful soul in the tunnel, and the fact that he dedicated so much time, it was a real pleasure to, I guess,
to be his muse,
to be a muse of Mr. Miller. So I'm very grateful to that. Yeah.
And what about the one show? Did you get to star on the one show?
So it hasn't been broadcast yet. So they interviewed me and some of the other runners, and they're going to do an episode dedicated to the London Marathon. And this is going to be You're
going to pee all over that, and
they're going to do a segue which says, "What do you do now you finish the London Marathon?"
Awesome, I love it.
Mark's going to hate that. The same sentence, his race as the London
totally
Marathon.
Hate that, isn't he?
Imagine the 2025 applications. That's going to be wild.
Did they interview at the end or during the race?
They had been interviewing people as they were like pulling out a lot of the people that didn't finish.
Yeah.
And then they interviewed me at the end. Yeah, the end of the race.
Did you make sentences, or were you just?
I've absolutely no idea.
No, I
barely make sentences, as you can tell on this podcast at the best of times. So I probably won't be in it. Probably won't make the final. Of course you
will. I will be writing to the official
100%.
Complaints if you're not. So we've got lovely David in the tunnel, both lovely Davids. Then you touched a little bit early on about your hallucinations. We don't need to go into I always get worried hearing people's hallucinations in case they become my hallucinations, because I'm always like, don't put that in my brain. But what was sort of like the lowest? Was there the lowest of the lows in the tunnel?
It's a weird one to explain. I'll tell you one example, but I think time's already healed a bit. It's already become, it was a low, it's becoming more of a fuzzy warm. And so I was doing laps. So this is now on this Sunday morning. I was doing some laps with Kevin. And I'd kind of worked out what I needed to do to kind of get the job done, and so I could mix up a bit of like fast walking with a bit of shuffling and stuff. It was all kind of fine, but I hadn't really had a lot of sleep at this point. But I thought, okay, I'm maybe had like 6 to 8 hours left of lapping, and that was me done. So if I could push on through to the end, then let's do it. But there was this strange moment where Kevin just stopped, and he just said, I'm just feeling so like sick, nauseous with this sort of sleep deprivation feeling. I'm just going to lie down. I'm just going to lie down here in the middle of the tunnel. And I just thought to myself, what a great idea.
Okay.
So, but what was really spooky was at this time we'd been joined by the French guy that they were making the movie of, Christian. And obviously I knew that Christian was in second place. I mean, admittedly, he was something like a few hours behind me. He didn't seem to be lapping any quicker. But he just looked at me and said, I tell you what, he said this in the most amazing French accent, so he could have said absolutely anything. I understood him to say, like, I will walk to the end of the tunnel, and when I walk back, I will wake you guys up, yeah? So I was thinking, okay, well, that's roughly going to be 10 to 15 minutes of sleep, isn't it? So we lie down, we fall asleep. When I woke up, Christian was there. And my first thought was, hang on, he's not facing the right way as if he's just gone up to the tunnel and back. He's obviously done quite a few laps, hasn't he? And now he's the other way. And he's telling me...
dirty little Frenchman.
I suddenly was really crushed. And I was just
Have you learned nothing from history?
I was like, how sneaky. He's probably in the lead. I've probably been asleep for a week. So yeah, that sort of feeling of like, being tired, it's like, Eddie, like, you try and have a micro nap, don't you? But you just never know whether it worked or what worked really meant. So yeah, at that point, I was just suddenly feeling a bit sick through the tired element, what Kevin had just made me do. I thought it was a really good idea. Now I might be like in second place, but I don't really know. I need to get to the end of the tunnel like a chump, like try and get some mobile phone reception, refresh the page, see where that naughty, cheeky Christian is.
Had he done that? Did he do that?
No, he'd done the 10 minutes.
Oh, we doubted him, Christian.
I never doubted him. But that was a combination of all of those lows at the same, the sickness part, the sleep thing that you try and do, but you're not really sure, plus the whole mental
double crossed by the
Double crossed.
Yeah.
Did you
it's funny now, isn't it?
Did you ever, when you were in the tunnel, stop and then go, I don't know which way I'm going?
Yes. Yeah. So basically, I tell you what, the other sort of mad thing about the sleep thing was, I don't think anybody was really doing that well of sleeping at the end of the tunnel where you were supposed to sleep because it was too cold.
Yeah.
So what people started to do in the second day and the second night was the thing that you were told not to do, which is to sleep in the middle of the tunnel. But what happened is, so you would be from a long distance away, you would think you'd seen a character up above. And because obviously, as people were starting to get very tired, but also injured, what would happen, and saw this a few times, people would lean against the rock and they would kind of slide down the rock in a very uncomfortable way. And they'd be falling asleep as they were sliding down the rock. So that when you got a lot closer to them, like this one guy had like one leg in the air, like a shoulder blade somewhere else. And the first time it happened, Eddie, I was like so worried for this person that I stopped what I was doing. Obviously, I leant in and I sort of tapped them on the shoulder, and they just like did this like werewolf thing at me where they just looked so like, like, what are you doing? That I kind of like stood back. And then I just didn't know what to do.
It's me, the mayor of Hackney. I'm here.
It's the running mayor of Hackney. I'm here to save you. So then, because they'd spooked me, I then suddenly thought, I just don't know which way I just come from. I didn't know, like, you know, I was kind of standing straight in front of them. And I just thought, but then, so I just decided to go one way. But yeah, that was weird, because I was just expecting a whole lot of, like, you know, love and, like, this was a good thing to do, but I stopped doing that. After a couple of werewolf moments.
That's horrible. Yeah. I think let them be. Let them slide down that slimy wall.
Let them slide, Eddie.
Let them slide.
That is why all the challenges I think I'd face going the wrong way is not one of them that would spring to mind before I toed the line. I've got one more question. You wake up tomorrow, you're presented with a sack with 2 balls in it.
That's like the tunnel all over again.
One of the balls has the Spine Race written on it, and the other one has the Tunnel Ultra Race written on it.
Yeah.
Which one are you hoping to draw out of the sack?
I mean, such a no-brainer for me. I mean, the moment that I finished the Spine and everything that happened after the Spine was just so beautiful. You know, the sort of connections I'd made and the love for that race. And again, I think, Eddie, you'll know this, you know, like when you finish your own version, but the race is still going on. And the people that finished on day 7 of the Spine were like, I was just in awe of them. There was some people in that particular year, and it happened again this year, didn't it? I mean, there was some just astonishing stories that happened in the Spine. And, you know, my friend Alan, who got pulled out of the race at 264 miles. I just want to do it again. You know, there's so much more to do in that race. Whilst it was still pretty harsh, I just deeply, deeply fell in love with it. But the tunnel is awful. It's absolutely brutal on every level. I even had the point where, because there's no refunds of the tunnel, I was a bit poorly in the household. We were all sick with the virus throughout Christmas. So I got into January and I thought, do you know what? Am I going to actually do this race? And I thought, you know, like I'm never going to sign up for this race again.
Yeah.
So it's totally now or never. And the people that go back and do the tunnel again and now again, it's just absolutely mind-blowing on every level you could possibly think of. So, yeah, I'll never, ever do the tunnel. If that scenario happens, Gary, I'll let you have the ticket.
Oh, no, I've got no interest.
I'll drop you off.
I think the thing is with these mega races is they are all hideously painful and they have their lowest lows. But as you know, as you just said, like the fuzzy memories that start to come back, all I can really think when I think about the Spine is all the wonderful moments that we had and shared, even though they were in the lowest of lows, like crossing Hike Up Nick and like handing fishermen friends back.
Oh
and
my God.
And you shouting like, stay alive, we gotta stay alive. Through that, like, even though at the time it was like, this is horrendous. When I look back on it now, I'm like, that was the coolest thing. I want it more. I want to do it again. Like, but I guess with something like the tunnel, but imagine the strength it's given you now. If you can do that, if you can chaff your balls for 30 hours, imagine what you can do next time you do the Spine.
I can chaff my balls for 100 hours.
Get this.
Sign me up, Eddie.
Sign me up. Before we jump to the quick 5, I know that everybody listening will be thinking this. Did you get home in time? Was your house trashed? Is that why there's scaffolding?
I'm going to have to say that...
you can plead the Fifth Amendment. You can say
No, it's important to share with everybody that, you know, that thing where a teenager and his friends have tidied up the whole house and they've basically left the ashtray full of its contents. The house was immaculate.
Oh,
and we got back early in the afternoon, and we had a really delicious birthday pizza. It was It was a dream finish. Yeah, it was really nice. Thanks, buddy.
You sat there going, "Don't touch me! Nobody touch me! Nobody touch me!"
give me another vat of Vaseline and a slice of pizza. I'm all right.
Did you find your vision for the next few days after being in all that dark? Did you find it hard then?
I did. I totally did. The way I don't know if you. I had this, like the thing you get where you have a few restless nights sleep, don't you? For lots of different reasons. I had the most inflamed, like itchy ankles. Again, I think it was horrible. I think it was the tropical nature of the tunnel, and it was rabid. I was like waking up and wanting to deeply scratch my ankles. But yeah, no, it definitely impaired my already impaired vision. Yeah, I was pretty battered for that. I tried to be a bit braver, but the first week was full of sort of low
quiet moments.
Quiet moments, Teddy.
Very
Lots of
quiet
moments.
You just sit on the sofa and I just need to be you're right, dear. Yes, I just need to go inside myself because living is hard. Breathing is hard. Generally, just leave me be. Oh, you're our hero. You're our hero. And totally convinced both of us never ever to do that race. But we love sharing. We love sharing your Right, quick five. If we know Dave, it's not going to be quick.
Here's the challenge.
First question is Yorkshire puddings on Christmas dinner.
So, what great question. I have been a vegetarian for about 7 years.
Not when we ate the chicken soup, but we'll just gloss over the
Shush.
Oh, Eddie, straight under a bus.
That sausage was totally legit. I kind of it's one of those things, isn't it? It's a bacon sandwich moment, Gary, isn't it? That like a proper roast fits a Yorkshire pudding, but I do like a Yorkshire.
Are you a nut roast during the family roast kind of guy?
I do like a nut roast. Eddie,
I love a nut roast. Yeah. I'd have a nut roast any night with anything. Doesn't have to.
Do you know? I'm really into mushrooms.
Oh, well, okay.
and I have to say that one of the things that my coach set me for the tunnel as training was basically sensory perception things. So, like, if you're going to remove the sight, like how do you dial into all the other perceptions? So just before doing the tunnel, I went to the IMAX cinemas that do the 3D cinema.
Yeah.
And went to see like a 3D thing of like mushrooms kind of growing all around. And I got a lot of inspiration from that. I recommend your listeners go deep with the mushrooms.
Okay, I'm not a big fan of mushrooms, so I'm not going to sign myself up, but I'll send Gary.
Eddie, come on.
I'm sorry.
Turn on.
All right. Mark Cobain's been on the phone. Paramount Pictures have been in touch. Not again. Yeah. Paramount Pictures have been in touch, and they're going to do a movie on the Tunnel Ultra 2024, and they want to know from you, who's going to be the leading man? Who are you going to have play you, David?
I love this. Is Dustin Hoffman still alive?
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't call that one, did we, Gary?
No.
When I was a bit younger, people used to say that they reminded me of Tootsie.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say a marathon man or not Rain Man.
nothing glamorous, Gary. Yeah.
Do you want to know who we thought you were going to say?
Gerard Butler.
No, but another good one.
Yeah.
Who did I say? Matthew McConaughey. That's who.
Oh, that's amazing, Gary.
Yeah. I
Top shout.
I said Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise?
Take any of them.
Tom Cruise is 4'3" and I'm 6'5". It never worked.
It's Paramount, then
I just thought it'd be really funny.
Yeah. I'd love to see a Matthew McConaughey version of The Tunnel. Oh, mate, I'm going to do the film rights. Let's do this, Gary.
He'd be great.
He'll do it.
Oh, I'd love his accent. Oh, that'd be the best, wouldn't it?
Yeah, sort of. Is it Lincoln Lawyer, is it? Or is it, what's it? Oh, he's so hot in that. Right, we've digressed. Next one.
Bucket list race.
I mean, there's a few, basically. I'm going to crew at Badwater this year.
Oh,
Awesome.
Oh, you'll be brilliant at that. Oh,
And I know that people who have crewed in the past tend to get a nod. So maybe Badwater 2025 is probably going to be the next one off that list, Gary.
I love it. Awesome. Favorite Easter egg?
Oh my God, another great question. Are you guys fans of Tony's chocolate?
Yes, I am. Oh
Oh
goodness
my
me,
God,
delicious.
I'm literally obsessed.
okay. They've got big bars in our bijou little coffee shop, and
Yeah.
I want to buy one, but I haven't. But should I?
It's not cheap,
Oh,
but very nice.
It's the best. So they do an Easter egg. I cannot wait to eat several. Like like when you look around, like your local area, like especially for calendars, and you buy them cheap. A few days afterwards, I'm going to be scouring the local Hackney area for knockoff Tony's chocolate eggs. I'll save you one, Eddie.
Save me one.
Yeah.
Send it. It'll be fine.
I will. I'll
Squished,
send
it's
it.
fine.
Promise.
Yeah.
We're going to go back. We're going to rewind the years. Which posters were on your wall as a teenage boy, David?
Are you talking about films or
No, anything.
So I was a massive Smiths fan. So I would scribble Smiths lyrics on my wall, and then I would put posters over the Smiths lyrics.
I can see.
And I actually did sing a lot in the tunnel, and I did obviously gravitate to a lot of Smiths-based lyrics. When in the spine, it was Christmas songs, but yeah, it was Smiths in the tunnel.
Oh, I do like the Smiths. Oh, maybe we're going to have a Smiths Instagram story music. Yeah, every week we share the podcast over on Instagram. You get the choice, David. What is the Instagram story music going to be? Smiths or Morrissey? I'm easy, actually.
Well, actually, so going back to our lovely friend, Mr. Miller, and his dedication to the number 13, it drew me back to the Blur album. And I sort of thought that if they ever wanted to reissue that album, then David Miller's picture would make an absolutely stunning album cover. So I think some whatever track there's no distance left to run on that album. I mean, it's kind of written in stone, wasn't it?
There you go.
It's meant to be. It's meant to be. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
I've loved it, guys.
I absolutely loved it. I could have asked you so many more questions.
Scratched the surface, my goodness me.
We've only scratched the surface, but thank you so much for sharing your trauma with us. I still think, as you were telling it, I was like, I reckon people will still sign up for this race and think
they love it.
Sold it. They love it. Good luck with the recovery. Take it easy. No rush. And yeah, we look forward to 2025 Badwater podcast recap.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Big love.
Thanks,
love.
David.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
I'm amazed we wrapped that up when we did. What a great chat with David. My goodness me, he's a busy guy. We could have chatted for hours and hours. Thanks, David. Really appreciated your time. Strava. First up, the random wheel selected Gillian McGill, 55.1 miles with the longest run of 31.8 miles. I wonder if that was an event or a
That
recce.
must have been the Centurion 100 Hills. I bet you it was.
Could have been Lakeland 100 recce. I think the Coniston.
No, 100 Hills. Bet it was 100 Hills. Gillian,
Let
put us
know.
right.
Yeah, request to follow so we can't find out what it is. But yeah, 6,243 feet of elevation. Really tasty. Chris Burkett, 58 miles, another 34.6
100
miles
Hills.
for his longest
Definitely
run.
100 Hills.
Nailed on these are Lakeland 100. Yeah, Chris did 5,663 feet of elevation. And Ilana Wigfield, 63.8 miles with the longest run of 12.7, 4,475 feet of elevation. Ooh, shorter run, but bigger miles. Request to follow for every one of those. So yeah, we can't find out what you've been up to, but yeah, whatever. Kudos kudos to everybody over in our Strava Club. And so much merch out there. My goodness me, Lou, Shannon Binns and Kat Eaton supporting the runners at Lakeland 100. Recce, great to see you repping the buffs. Lee Bailey's back in the car park encountering other tea and trails listening. Bit of snood solidarity down there. And Katie Bennett, Sarah Dunn and Jackie Elliott. Yeah, they took part in the Greener Miles Running Bridges to Boundaries race. That looked awesome. And I bumped into a listener out on the trails. Jamie Brown. Yeah, we crossed path on the old railway lines when I was running back to Wingate. Happy days. I'm going to force myself on people soon. Just take selfies. I think that's the thing.
Soon? You're an absolute pest. We all know that.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'll make it very obvious. I do enjoy meeting our listeners out there.
For somebody who's quite like shy and you get nervous about like doing the interviews and stuff, when we have met people, I think I'm a little bit more shy, and you're like, "Oh, guys, hi, it's some race."
Yeah, I do enjoy it. I think that this whole Zoom thing, it's a bit of a disconnect. I much prefer to do the interviews face to face.
I bet you would. Yeah, dirty dog.
I'll be all over them.
Would spat on the laptop.
Tales from the trails.
I'm going to read this story, and you can guess who this story is about at the end of the story. About 16 years ago, I worked in London at the time. Daily commute to work with a pal of mine, which was a daily run, dodging in amongst the smartly dressed office types, conscious of our old lycra ponginess and their contrasting sweet-smelling, freshly pressed suits. When we hear a loud, "Excuse me," from behind us, and turn round to see a young, fresh-faced, suited and booted gent holding one of my pals, was once white bars, that she thought was in the bottom of her rucksack. Such items should not be allowed to see daylight. It had fallen out of her bag. A classic mistake of 2 zips at the top of the rucksack, which had gradually edged apart from each other as we were swiftly running along. "Thank you," said my pal with ruddy cheeks. Oh, how I laughed. Oh, how I believed she may have bought a padlock for her rucksack to ensure such an episode never happened again. From Lindsay Browning.
You've never changed a bit, have you, Eddie?
It's always been stinky. And you know what we used to do? This is when we were PE teachers. We used to run into school. Then we used to hang our sweaty running stuff on the radiator in the PE office. Can you imagine the smell? Our poor other friends that worked.
That sounds gross.
We had the best days when we worked in London in the PE office, and we used to put each other in the PE lost property bin, which had wheels on, and do the spin of death, and you had to get in with all the lost property. And we used to push it down the corridor and then add the turn to it at the same time. You had to see if you could sort of survive, not only survive the stinky lost property, but survive this wheel of death as well. Oh yeah, it reminds me of like we were living a different life to all those other people in London that were going to do proper jobs, and we had a great time going to teach PE, but constantly smelling. Because it was much quicker to run than to try and drive or get the tube or anything like that. Probably didn't have enough money in those days too. Oh, happy days. That poor young man handing me stinky bra. Now there's running rucksacks. This was pre-running rucksacks, I reckon. This was such a long time ago. That was even before. I remember I had an old MP3 player that you could download. Oh,
old school. My goodness.
Old school. It had about 5 songs on. My God, I was cool with that.
I used to love my MP3. All the stuff that I used to carry and everything is just on your smartphone now. How are you feeling? Do you want a boost? We've got a 5-star review. Best running podcast. Well, technically, that's not accurate according to the podcast awards. I'll take it, though. I'll take it. Andy the Mountain Goat. I have recently found this podcast and I've been binge listening. It's so informative as well as interesting and inspiring. My only complaint is that I'm nearly caught up, so I'll have to wait for the weekly release. But aren't the best things in life worth the wait? Keep up the great work, guys, and happy running. That's from Andy the Mountain Goat over at Apple Podcast. Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Our beat it. Somebody thought I said beat it when I said beat it.
Oh, say that again.
Somebody said I said beat tits and not beat it. Anyway, to celebrate our new partnership with BEET-IT BEET-IT Sports. They are giving away 2 performance and recovery packs worth £75 each, one for Patreons and one for everybody else. If you are a legend Patreon or above, then you do not need to do anything. You'll all go in the hat, but everybody else will need to, 1, be a member of the Tea and Trails Facebook group, and 2, share the competition post. And make sure, my goodness me, this is super important, make sure you check your privacy settings, because we can't always see who has shared the post or not. Winners we pick at random 25th of March.
Let's do this, Gary. Let's do this. Last long run, full kit. Full loser out running around on the trails. I'm also planned a route that I don't know, Gary, because I want to check my nav settings on my watch that I'm happy with. I'm happy with what comes up on the watch face. So that's my plan on Thursday. Going to do another hike run session. Those are fun. I love those. And the jeopardy of them. I think the one I did last week, I didn't take poles. It's so wet and muddy where the snow is like melting. I put my foot on this bit for between snow and mud, and my friend was like, oh my God, the whole like earth moved because there's so much water like sitting underneath it. And it's quite hard to get up some of the climbs because they're so wet and muddy. Everyone knows this because I've heard the UK is much the same. One of those, love that. That's nice because it's easy. Well, it's not easy because you're going up steep hills, but it's not like running for 20 miles. I've got a hill session, but actually I've just done a speed session because of the way the week worked. It was easier to do my harder session on the treadmill. And so I just went flat and fast and basically just tried to run 4-minute Ks as long as I could for long session to try and beat you, Gary. The girl on the there's only 2 treadmills in my gym and she did keep looking over at me, but I had my music on so loud. So I wasn't too sure how hard I was breathing. It was meant to be like, just tempo effort, hard, but not too hard. And I was like, am I
dripping with sweat, Edwina?
Let's just say the wipe down of the treadmill was quite a heavy duty. Then I did my gym session straight after, which I hate doing because then it's so hard. But I had to have a full change of clothes because nobody wanted that next to them. Anyway, so done 1 more hard gym session, 2 more hard gym sessions to do, and then I'm out of there. Sort my kit. So yeah, tick off the sessions. No beating the plan. No heroics. If my long run will be 3 to 4 hours. If I don't know how long it's going to take me. If it takes me 3 hours, done. I'm going to just go hard, but not too hard. Let's just get to the weekend feeling good. I am feeling good. I felt really good on the treadmill. I was like, I feel good, feel strong.
This is an awesome time to feel good. I love it. Brilliant.
I was envisaging catching James over those muddy fields running into Richmond and him like groveling, walking along going, I'm done. And me going, yeah, I'm done. Okay. Do you want to run with me a bit? Sorry, James. I was imagining your jeopardy and me running on. Why it was James, mainly it was just because I know he's doing the race, but I could have picked anybody that I was just running past all those horrible, endless muddy fields and me just crushing out the 4-minute Ks. I mean, let's face it, if there's a 6-minute K in this race, it's going to be enough.
I wonder what that section, because we didn't do it, Richmond to Osmotherley, very flat.
I saw that Hannah had done it a couple of weeks ago, and she said it was awful.
Oh, goodness me.
And so it's going to be podcast on, head down, get to count the Ks. I guess I might do it in the dark. And I always think those sections are the best to do in the dark because you just like Blakey Ridge would be better in the dark than in the light, wouldn't it? Because you just wouldn't really, not on a
sunny day. On a sunny day, that would be beautiful.
Yeah. Right. What about you, Mr. 259?
Oh, same as you. Keep my cool. Do not try and beat any workouts. It's probably the last big week, I think, on the plan. I think about 85 miles I'll be aiming for roughly. And then, it's taper time. I enjoy the taper time, so I'm looking forward to it, mainly because I seem to get so much more time back in my life. So, I enjoy that. Still keep the sessions going. I'll probably start doing more body weight or lighter weights down the gym. That is it for me. Yeah, a couple of sessions. I think, what are the sessions? Do I need to share the sessions? No, we'll do that next week. I wonder if
I think people love the sessions.
Anybody really cares about the deets?
Is anybody? Well, isn't that a song? Everyone loves the deets. I only don't share my deets because I can't really remember because my brain is fried and I'm too lazy to look back. I just know how hard it was.
I used to like listen to Marathon Talk when I think Tom was trying to break 5 minutes for a mile. Goodness me, sheesh, how many years ago was that? But yeah, I love the deets of his workouts.
I dipped into a Marathon Talk when I think who were we interviewing that wasn't a very podcasty person, hadn't been on Enemy but had been on Marathon Talk. It was one and it was back, oh my gosh, it was so long ago.
Ian Williams. That's it.
Was it Ian Williams? Ian Williams, yeah. Episode 63 in the bank. Kudos to you. If you're still running, keep on going, snap open. Maybe it's time to snap open that caffeine gel. See if you can take it better than I do. Well done. You are doing awesome. Think of that mental strength. Think of those muddy fields. Think of crushing by, dancing over those stiles and through those gates. Grab a cuppa if you finish smashing protein, top up those electrolytes, maybe slide into those recovery boots or find Love is Blind Season 6 on Netflix. Thanks to Precision Fuel and Hydration for sponsoring this week's show. Don't forget, use code CAPSLOCK-T24 for 15% off. Thanks to all our partners and patrons too. We couldn't do this without you and your ongoing support.
Good luck to everybody who's out on a recce this weekend, maybe a long run, park run, nursing an injury, or even racing. I noticed it's Hormones 55 this week. Good luck to Mark Thacker and everybody else who's towing the line. You got this. And good luck to John and Shirley, plus all the marshals there. Hope you have a successful and safe race. Hormones 55. That is an awesome route. Probably my favourite of all the Hormones events. Many fond memories. I hope you have. Oh, wow. This was the event that I didn't do it, luckily. It was the Beast from the East.
Oh, I remember that. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh,
I think they got so much, I think unfair, to be honest, but they got thrown under a bus by media who actually knew nothing about running. And then I think when entries opened the next year around, I think it sold out in about 2 minutes or something crazy like that. You want a bit of that, want a slice of that. Whatever you're doing, keep sharing those awesome running pics. It's lovely seeing you all repping your merch and sharing your adventures in the Facebook group. Keep listening to the UK's #1 trail running podcast too. Be kind to future self. Breathe and believe. Progress, not perfection. Keep your shield high and be arsed. My name is Gary Thwaites.
And I'm Eddie Sutton.
And that was episode 63 of the Tea and Trails podcast.